Hi, it's Rachel Caruso here, MK Ultra survivor and ongoing target from the Merovingian Illuminati bloodline. Today, before we go any further, let me confirm the date and time with you. As you can see, it is 4:44. That's funny. Angel numbers, a little numerology for you. It's 4:44 p.m. on Friday, August 7th, 2020. So in today's video, I'm going to give you a summary of the events that have been happening since lockdown, everything within MK Ultra, what's been going on with me, personal update, and I'm also going to show you the UK government's role in my human trafficking with regards to Chloe Nicholson, who you saw here on my channel, at least on my BitChute channel. I showed you on YouTube how the deep state scrubbed these exposing videos from YouTube. But on my BitChute channel, you saw Chloe Nicholson in the act of trafficking me along with her family. And of course, actually retaining, detaining, holding a person with the intent to exploit them is part of human trafficking. It's not just the transportation. So actually what you saw was her, the abuse within MK Ultra, that's all human trafficking. So you saw many components of that, and you saw the way she forced me to another handler, forced me from her accommodation. It's a psy-op. She wasn't a landlady, she was a handler. So it forced me from that accommodation to another accommodation, continuing on being held by handlers. So the overall psy-op is that landlords and roommates, anybody who you rent with or from, is a handler. And in my case, I have not been able to live on my own in self-contained accommodation until just a couple weeks ago. I'm in self-contained accommodation right now. However, the woman who I'm subletting from, she's not the original landlord of the building. The landlord is connected to her small flat here. So the woman is definitively a handler, ergo the landlord, who I've had little interaction with, is a handler as well. So at least I'm living in my own space, although the landlord, or excuse me, the woman who I'm subletting from, Jamila Vogelsberger, also known as Sabrina Vogelsberger in Dartington, is on a Spanish island right now, and nonetheless she's made every effort to control me from outside of the country with incessant messages and emails, with extreme manipulation. That's all for another video, but that's just kind of putting into context what happened after I was trafficked out of Chloe's accommodation. Now in today's video, I'm going to show you the local council's role in aiding and abetting Chloe and the next handler, who wasn't Jamila. I've lived with, oh Lord, I've lived with 3 other handlers prior to that. Well, 2 other accommodations prior to that, and they were handlers. And so I contacted the local council. I was posting this in Facebook some. I wasn't able to complete the correspondence I had with the council, which indeed proves not just their complicitness, but their active role in the trafficking. A lot of times complicitness is actually used as a cover for like not having a direct hand in the trafficking. So I want you to be aware of that. It's not that he just was a random employee who was made to be complicit in Chloe's trafficking. This is organized. The network of the deep state is vast. And it's whenever you have anything to do with the system for an MK Ultra victim, the only people you're ever going to come across are the corrupt people, the Freemasons, the Illuminati members, the human traffickers themselves. So I hope that helps kind of put this in context before we go further, and then I'll give a personal update at the end. But essentially, this video is following up on my last videos, which were exposing Chloe Nicholson. So here we're going to expose her further and her accomplices. All right, so I emailed a complaint to the local council. And I looked up online, like, what I should do in the type of situation I was in. And it said, reports using this link, using this email and whatnot. So that's what I did. And this is my complaint. To whom it may concern. I'm having serious issues with my landlord of 7 months and would like to make a report. The issues are as follows. She's withheld her last name and full identity from me. She refuses to put up curtains over the full-length window of the front and back door and front window. When she said it would be too much of a bother and cost for her, I offered to put them up with a tension rod. She prohibited me from doing this. I pointed out not having the option of privacy is a safety concern, and in retaliation, she tried to evict me through a text message. She later gave me a handwritten note, unsigned, so that she can continue to withhold her last name, evicting me because she sold the property. I have been here for 7 months and she only gave me 2 weeks notice, which is insufficient. She refuses to speak to me about this or any other issues. She has exhibited antisocial behavior, harassing, defaming, and threatening me. She has also solicited her family to harass and intimidate me, and they have gotten physically violent. I have video evidence of this. During her family's attacks, she locked me out of the kitchen and another room that was in my rental agreement. I have no access to drinking water or cooking facilities. She is trying to evict me while the government has a complete ban on evictions as of 18th March. She is trying to force me out by Thursday, March 26th. You can see my situation is urgent and I have nowhere else to move during the coronavirus pandemic, and I am living in fear of my landlord whose house is adjoined to mine. I've only a day before she forces me out onto the street. Please advise on what action will be taken. And now, of course, this is actually a matter for the police, or at least in addition, for the local council with housing issues, but also for the police. But, you know, having actually, the police have actually been drawn in to do everything that I've outed Chloe for. I do have video evidence of this. So with other landlords, I've been forced out onto the street by the police with absolutely no legitimate reason. And while I was at Chloe's, the police they were part of a community satanic ritual for the holiday Satanic Revels in January while I was sick with COVID. So it was part of this whole ritual. I was physically assaulted by the police. I have a lot of that on camera as well. And Chloe's accommodation was boxed in by the police. So, and, you know, I have a long history in the UK of abuse by the police. So, you know, if I could avoid them, who have threatened to, you know, detain me, deport me, have me committed or sectioned as it's called in the UK, if I could avoid them, I was going to. So that's why I left them out of it at this point. And then I received a response from David Sexton, who, as you'll see here, is the Senior Environmental Health Specialist, Housing, West Devon Borough Council in South Hams District. So this is his response. And at first it seems like he's going to help, and then it takes a turn. And why does he do this? Before we go further into the emails, he does this because it's going to waste my time. I had a day to move. I had been trying to find another place to live. You know, since I got my notice, I'd been scrambling. It was at the very beginning of the lockdown. It was literally impossible to find a place to live. Again, of course, the circumstances forcing me in with another handler. So he's doing this to waste my time, to believe that he's going to help me be safe where I am and I don't have to move. And then eventually he's going to turn around to say, I do have to move. So this is his first email, which he provides to lure me into a false sense of safety and security. Right, good morning. The landlord needs to serve a Section 21 notice and can only force you to leave after they obtain a court order. Now that is legally true. That's like, this is the only true thing he will ever say, but then later he will renege it. And of course I was aware of that, and that's why I provided certain details that I did in my first complaint. I would be more than happy to speak with your landlady. Could you provide your address, and as she texted you, perhaps her phone number? If she tries to forcibly remove you, stay put and call the police, and me on the number below. He had, like I said, don't want to include the police, and he's encouraging me to do so. Here's the link to shelter. So this is a charity. As I've already disclosed, 99% of charities worldwide, if not 100%, are fraudulent. I'm not talking about crops. They are fraudulent at their core. If you're a TI, especially an MK Ultra TI, and one who's a whistleblower exposing this, no way in hell is a charity going to help you. No way in hell are they going to do anything except traffic you as well. So he passed me off to them, said they provide extra advice around evictions. I had already visited their website, so I was well informed. And so we'll go to my response. David, thank you for your advice. My landlord's name is Chloe, and her number is blah, blah, blah. She lives in the adjoining building to mine at Ashworth Lodge, Ashburton Road, Totnes. Please do call her to notify her of the legal process. I know she has no right to evict me just because she sold the property, and that even so, her process of eviction was illegal, but now she's not allowed to file for eviction altogether because of the recent government ban. Yet she clearly feels empowered to ignore the law, and the police have told me they are friends with her. Our building is actually cornered in right behind the police station car park. Chloe has threatened to call the police on false accusations when I objected to her locking me out of the kitchen. So I'm making it clear that the police are corrupt. Anyways, a few weeks ago, the police illegally forced their way into my home to question me about my immigration status. They'd called Chloe and said she'd given them permission to be in the house, although I know this isn't her right to do so. I declined the police entry, but they came in anyways and told me they know Chloe well. I also have this on camera. So again, I'm giving further information to indicate that the police are corrupt and they're a part of this particular problem. As Chloe has already tried to forcibly remove me from my home, I expect her to again tomorrow. I'm still concerned that if left on my own in this situation to contact the police, they would be biased against me and I would be put out onto the street. I especially feel vulnerable because of the government lockdown and not being able to have a friend over as a witness. So this was the start of the lockdown, and I believe it was like March 23rd that the lockdown began, and so nobody was allowed to, it was at its strictest at that point, and so nobody was allowed to go into somebody else's home. I have nowhere to go in an emergency either. So I'm saying he should contact the police instead of making me do it. If you could obtain from her in writing that she understands the eviction laws and will not forcibly remove me, I feel that may help. Like, I'm having to come up with an alternative solution. I'm always put in the role of taking on the responsibility of everyone else because they will completely omit or neglect their job duties. Even police, even people who are supposed to be responsible for your safety. Also, I need access back to my kitchen along with the appliances and crockery she had included in the rental agreement. So I'm trying to give him something to take action on instead of just letting him sit by again. Additionally, she's moving out within the next day or two, and I expect we'll try to take with her the Wi-Fi modem, which is in her building, and cancel her internet service. My rental agreement includes Wi-Fi, and I have no other source for the internet. During this lockdown, it is, of course, crucial I have internet access. If you can sort these matters out with her and obtain a written agreement, I'd be much appreciative. Is there anything else you can do to ensure she knows and accepts the law and will not forcibly remove me? And let's go to his gaslighting response. So this is his very succinct response to all the points that I brought up. So he doesn't actually respond to anything I said, except for the one thing that he saw as a flaw or a vulnerability where he could crack into. So he will give her a call this morning. What is the point of his call? What is his goal? What is he going to try to accomplish with this call? Just a couple of questions. Did you sign a tenancy agreement? Are you renting a separate property or lodging with Chloe? Now, I already said that. But this is an angle he's going to be using. You'll see in the future emails. And did you pay a deposit? So this was accurate, actually. Everybody had been quoting to me a government link, which I saw, which said there was a complete ban on evictions. Now, the link at that time, the article was saying that the legislation was being put forward for urgent acceptance or whatever, but it hadn't necessarily been in place yet. But the government had issued a public announcement of the upcoming legislation to deter all evictions. And in that statement, in that same article, it tells landlords to not evict. And it advises them to have compassion and understanding. So this is neither here nor there if it's technically active yet. And he doesn't specify that. So this is the gaslighting. This is the confusion. There's not quite a ban on evictions. What does that mean? Actually, there's about to be. It just hasn't been enacted yet. And so, just trying to confuse me further. And so he throws this in because if there were a complete ban on evictions, then nothing else would matter. None of the details that he's about to twist and manipulate would matter. So he's going to fabricate what the so-called proper process is. And so my response, am I misunderstanding something from this government notice? It says it in the title, complete ban on evictions. I wonder if it's still active and what it says now, if it's been updated. So published on March 18th. You can see from the headline there what it is, emergency legislation to suspend new evictions. You can pause to read all that if you like, or look it up yourself. Also, what about the fact that she can't evict me on the reason that she sold the property? I read that here. So I'm showing him my evidence to deter his gaslighting. And so you're welcome to read that, visit the article yourself. To answer your questions, I did not sign a tenancy agreement. She originally rented to me for 2 weeks as a B&B in April 2019. I found her from Airbnb, but I did not rent it through the website because I was having issues linking my bank account to the website at the time. This is a policy violation of Airbnb, but I was desperate for housing. Now, to clarify, I wasn't apologizing for me violating Airbnb's policy. This is a policy violation of Chloe on Airbnb. So anybody with a listing on Airbnb is not allowed to take private rentals. And so I'm just showing that she broke the policy. In July 2019, she texted me to ask if I wanted to return to rent long term. So our rental agreement was through text. She targeted me. She approached me. She asked if I wanted to rent long term, no longer as a B&B. I accepted. She has only casually texted me the rental agreement. At the time, I was in an abusive situation and was desperate to leave, so I accepted it despite the informalities. And so at the time, I was living with Emily Dodwell in Fullerton, Totnes. who is a handler. She had her young son living with her full time. He was 11 years old. And then she had a slightly older daughter who was about like 20, 21, who was away for some educational trip and who returned towards the end of my, I think I was there for 6 weeks, maybe longer. It felt so long. Yeah, I think it was only 6 weeks. Right, so that was the dynamic. Emily's, and this was all set up through another MK Ultra victim who is a legitimate victim, not a perpetrator, but she's asleep to her programming. I was friends with her at the time. She had been funneled in to rent from Emily, as well as many other of the same handlers I had been funneled to live with in Totnes. And I'm getting a little bit off track, but kind of, I think this is important to, it's just an opportunity to include a little bit more information about the network, the trafficking network in Totnes. So Emily Dodwell, she had this very dysfunctional, enmeshed relationship with her daughter. So narcissistic and codependent, but she was also molesting her son under the same roof as me. And as you know, the police, involving the police not only doesn't help, but it can actually be quite dangerous for me. I'm always turned into the perpetrator. And this was a big trauma for me. To be there, to not be able to help him, and for everything to be twisted and distorted. And I had very little contact with the family. I tried to make kind conversation with the son to help him just feel safe, just for an act of kindness, because he was just being constantly emotionally, verbally, and psychologically abused by his mother. And that was transparent. That was everywhere. That was in every room with all the windows, all the doors open. That's how the mother treated him. And she believed that she was so delusional in her own narcissistic entitlement. She believed that it was normal and she could pass it off as normal. And she would always try to make excuses like, oh, she would just blame it on him. And I would say nothing. Like, she would always try to involve me in it so that she could like defend her actions, like preemptively defends them because she knows she's guilty. And I would say nothing. Her behavior was disgusting with him. And then I know that she was molesting him. She shared a bed with him, not out of necessity. And her son hated her, rightfully so. They had a very hostile relationship. And she claims that he was so needy, he needed his mother to sleep at night in the same bed with him at 11 years old. Bullshit. Absolutely bullshit. That boy didn't want her anywhere near him. And the behavior patterns between the two of them made it clear that he was being molested. And there were other signs too. That's a whole subject unto itself. I don't want to go too far into that, but that's where I was. And having innocent people around in my, like, innocent people who I'm stuck with as I'm being victimized, they're being victimized. I can't do anything about it, you know, especially children. This is something that's very difficult for me to deal with. It was a similar situation in the safe house. They weren't children, but they were so victimized and controlled. They were basically like children. They had no control, and they were so brainwashed. They had no control of themselves, and they were so brainwashed. And that was like the main focal point of my trauma. So you could say that anytime they put me in a situation like that, anytime the Illuminati put me in a situation like that, it's to incur further trauma. All right, getting back to the email here. So I'm pointing out that she is going about her rental agreement all wrong, and somehow I end up taking the blame for this, as always. I do not have a copy of the text messages because my phone is an old button style. It doesn't keep a conversation thread. Nonetheless, she would have the text on her smartphone. I've seen her. She showed me her smartphone. We live separately. The two buildings of her home and mine are adjoined, and she has an internal door she uses to access my home. But so again, pointing out something that she does illegally, which never gets addressed. But we live in entirely separate quarters. On occasion, she has rented out the other bedroom as a B&B, but right now she has a personal friend staying there, supposedly just until she moves herself in the next day or two. It is another issue I did not mention that she enters my home with no notice and no reason and brings people into it, such as her family who harassed me the other day against my will. She enters usually daily, without reason, as I said. I did not pay deposits. Also, you should know before you speak to her that she has fabricated the claim that I have coronavirus as the reason to lock me out of portions of the house, including the kitchen. She tried to detain me to my bedroom. I do not have coronavirus. And so that false imprisonment, that detainment, that's kidnapping. I hope this information helps to clarify the circumstances. So let's go to his response. So he does not acknowledge anything of what I said, except for what he feels he can poke a hole in. The government link was an announcement, but the law has not been changed yet. However, the proper process has to be followed, but it is likely she will be unable to get a court date. So he's still like trying to give me this false sense of security. Like, you know, I won't have to move because with lockdown, she won't be able to get a court date. And he doesn't say that this link says to not evict people. It advises, so it's not like a legal ban, but it advises landlords nobody should be moving. And so not only should tenants be protected and not be evicted, but also within the whole psy-op of, you know, protect the public's health, the government didn't want anybody moving unnecessarily during the lockdown, which we are still in. It's a little bit lighter now. But at the time, that was the heaviest lockdown. The government didn't want anybody moving, and yet this is not included in this whole psy-op here. So he says he left a message for her, so she wouldn't answer. He left a message. And in the meantime, he suggests I speak to the housing options team at the council on this link. So he's, again, just trying to pass me off. And you'll see this becomes a theme. Pass me off so that he's not responsible. All right, coming to the next email. It just shows all the emails previous before you get to the next one. And I said, thank you, David, for clarifying about the announcements. And I was frazzled here. Like, I will just let you know, you saw the assault, the ongoing assault and attack from Chloe and her family, threatening the police. It was impossible to find some other place to live. I wasn't sleeping. I was having to try to pack to move somewhere I didn't know where I was going. I was traumatized and fried. And so that even came through in my response here, where I shared something like this was a breach of my boundaries unintentionally. I shared something and I took the responsibility, even though like I said, he didn't acknowledge anything that I was saying really. And he wasn't even addressing the announcement properly, or the whole government stance on moving. That was the part that he was using against me. And so here I started to internalize it. You know, after a lot of gaslighting, that's what you start to do. You start to doubt yourself. And so I was like, oh, well, it's my fault. I was confused. No, I was confused because he confused me. So I said I was probably too tired and rushed when I read it to absorb it properly. And that's absolutely true, but it doesn't negate how he is neglecting everything else and gaslighting me. I'll wait to hear if you speak with Chloe, or if not, what else can be done. This good afternoon. I have spoken to Chloe's father. Sorry, let me show you the time. All right. I have spoken to Chloe's father. The understanding I have is that is that you renting a room at the guest house, you have limited facilities in the room and until now have access to shared kitchen lounge. You was given notice 2 weeks ago and it is confirmed that the property is in the process of being sold and there will be renovation work starting soon. I believe you have excluded occupant status and not a tenant as you are technically lodging. Please look at the info on the link below as you do not have the same protection as conventional tenants. So this is, the status he's assigning me is incorrect. And I will show you with the link I showed him. So let's break this down. Oh wait, let's finish his email. My reading of the situation is that they do not need to get a court order. There you go. Now he's turned on me last minute. I strongly advise you to speak to the housing options team as soon as possible. Please also communicate with Chloe as they are saying they are finding it hard to speak to you. I'm sorry, it looks to me they are following the correct procedure and unfortunately you do not have the same protection as a conventional tenant. So let's break this down. First of all, the very first thing I said in my original complaint was that Chloe refused to speak to me and that she lied, like she's fabricated this whole story about me having coronavirus, all these things, violence, all these things which I said I have video evidence of. All of this has just gone by the wayside to focus in on one select point, which they feel they can prove as accurate, although it is false. It is actually not this, what they're claiming is not legal. This is not, none of this is true. But this is the assigned narrative. This is the constructed narrative they've been given to follow. This is the mind control program they've been assigned to execute. So that's why he ignored all of my complaints just to say, well, she can evict you and nothing else matters. And let's look at this. I'm gonna laugh. And of course this whole situation is fucked up. I've mentioned it before in previous videos, so hopefully you're starting to get accustomed to me now. I laugh at these absurd situations to cope. If you don't take these things humorously from time to time, when you are the target and you're living with this constantly, you will go insane. But don't let my laughter lighten this situation. Let's see it for what it is: human trafficking by pedophilic, raping, murdering, Satanist. So he's getting his information, and it's also like what he thinks he can get away with is what I find humorous. He spoke to Chloe's father, so he hasn't even spoken to my landlord, but some random man, unnamed, claiming to be her father, who is not at all involved in the tenancy or the rental. So we saw this pattern. I pointed it out to you in my previous videos exposing Chloe, that she would not speak to me for months. She would literally run and hide whenever I tried to talk to her. She would only text me, and the only time she spoke to me face to face was when she had her daddy around. It's the only time she felt like bolstered. She felt emboldened. So she can't handle these, she can't handle the job assignment she's been given as my handler on her own. Somehow her father has been given authority over her job position, her criminal job position as my trafficker. So he's, you know, everybody that was involved in this on the front line and behind the scenes, including her family who got to be on the front line eventually, they're all my traffickers as well. So this man, David, believes that he can address a complaint by talking to a landlord's parent. For no reason. Like, there's no reason that he spoke to her father. It's just ridiculous. She had her daddy call him. She had her daddy call him. She had her daddy call a government agent about a complaint for her rentals. And then this information is false. Can you be surprised that this information supposedly provided by Chloe's father is false? And so he ignores the fact that I don't have access to water, which anybody renting from any situation has a right to. It's legally imperative that you have drinking water. And also, he doesn't say like why there's a logic that my rental agreement should be changed without reason or notice, and why I'm forced into it. So it's not actually an agreement, but an imposition. I'm going to try not to mock his bad grammar, but it's tempting. He was given 2 weeks notice. And again, I proved to him, and I proved to you all, that you cannot evict someone because the property is being sold. So he ignores that, all to claim that I have this certain status, which does not afford me all the rights. And this status is inaccurate. And even with this status, I'm offered more rights than he is advocating for me or protecting on my behalf. All right, so passes me off once again, gaslights me. So this is part of gaslighting me with Chloe's own narrative. So I initiated a complaint that I couldn't communicate with her. She was refusing to talk to me. And instead of acknowledging that, he turns it around on me and says, I am at fault. This is dizzying for me. So as we go through, my communication will kind of be depleted. That's why it's been hard for me to make this video. I've had to have enough mental clarity and everything. All right. My response. Hi, David. I don't know Chloe's father, and he is not involved in the let. As I've already said, it is my landlord who refuses to speak to me. I also advised you that she and her family, which would be her father, so he was included in the original complaints, have exhibited antisocial behavior, have threatened and harassed me, and been physically violent. This is not only a complete block to communication, what I'm being blamed for, but is abusive, and according to the council website, a complaint which the council addresses. The information Chloe's father, who, as I've said, is not involved with the let, is skewed. Yet even with the link you sent me with these false parameters of renting as a B&B guest, because I'm not a B&B guest, it states that if I do rent from a private B&B, I'm an occupier with basic protection. So it's actually like just digging into his attack and just turning it back on him. Like if he's going to claim that I'm in a B&B, even though the information is inaccurate and comes from an unknown, unrelated source, Chloe's father, even with that, it's still false. The site says my landlord can give notice without reason, but still needs to apply for a court possession order, and that's the section 21, to evict me if I don't leave at the time given in the notice. There are also several critical issues I reported to you that have been neglected, including but not limited to no access to drinking water since I'm locked out of the kitchen. The bathroom water is not safe for drinking water, and my tenancy agreement gives me rights to the kitchen, living room, and den room. Lastly, the published advice from the government to landlords is that while the legislation hasn't passed yet, they should extend compassion during these extenuating circumstances of the pandemic. The violent and forceful pressure against me to quickly move during a pandemic lockdown is unreasonable and ill-advised, at the least. I'd appreciate it if you took another look at the information I've sent you thus far. So basically I'm saying, like, I'm not going in circles with you. I've stated the facts, you're ignoring them. So let's explore this link. So Chloe owns the building herself. She lived in part of it, the part which is adjoined to the section which she was renting out. And she did use it as a B&B, but she rented to me long-term. She sought me out for long-term accommodation. Nothing was ever booked through as a B&B, actually. Because even while I found her on Airbnb, we didn't use the site to book. Therefore, she can't claim it was a B&B booking. So, occupiers with basic protection. They can be evicted more easily than other private tenants. And even still, I had more rights than what he was stating. You can be evicted without a reason. This includes if you live in the same converted building as your landlord, but in a separate flat. So it could apply to me because living in a converted building, it was a nursery. Living in the same parts, but in a separate flat. So these are adjoining flats, mine and hers. But also, so I went through this website just now, and I remembered it doesn't necessarily state anything about a B&B here, but the way I got to this, to that site is by going through this checklist. It spat me out on that, and it named me as an occupier with basic protection, which means that the landlord has to go through the eviction. So let's go through this together so you can see it live. Who do you pay your rents to? The landlord, yeah, she doesn't live in the same property. What type of private housing do you live in? Or excuse me, what type of housing do you live in? And so we're going with David's psy-op of this is a B&B, like I rented as a B&B. You could have more rights and be an occupier with basic protection if you live in a privately owned B&B as your home. So that's what David is claiming, but he's going to switch it very subtly. He's going to gaslight me some more and switch it. But here it states, this is the end. So that is how I got to the link that I showed you all. Occupiers with basic protections. There is no negating from what David set up for himself. The whole narrative, the false narrative he set up is that I'm in a privately owned B&B, and that is my home. That concludes that email. Let's go to, I sent another one. Also, I would like to reiterate that I do have video evidence of Chloe's and her family's abuse and antisocial behavior, because I didn't say it enough, because saying it once and the first time wasn't sufficient. Of course, he knew I was reiterating my point to reiterate his neglect. His response, we'll show you the time there. Good afternoon. As far as I understand it, you rent a room where linen and fuel bills are included with shared facilities, and you are paying to stay at a guest house, B&B. I'm sorry, but cannot see how you can be occupied with basic protection. The closest domestic definition I can find to your situation is excluded occupier, but you're staying a commercial premises, so this is not a usual domestic renting situation. Firstly, do you want or need to stay at a property, or are you looking to me to stop them? I'll break all of this down at the end. Chloe's father is speaking on behalf of Chloe, and he has said that they need the room back by the weekend so that they can prepare for renovations. This date could be flexible, and they're willing to speak to you. I appreciate your allegation on harassment, and it is not a good situation. I can take a statement at a later date. However, I'm not sure if they take occupation of the room, whether I can stop them. Please contact the housing advice team. They will be able to clarify what help to find other accommodation. Again, passing me off. So let's go to the beginning. As I said, I wasn't renting. I told him I wasn't renting as a B&B, but he claims that. And I showed how even if that was true, I have more rights. And so he changes my status and the rights that are assigned it, but he doesn't say why. He doesn't say why the link I showed him is false. The link you saw here is false. He can't state why. He just negates it. So he gives himself the authority to alter the law at will for whatever suits him. A very common theme in the deep state network from my personal experience. I don't know if calling it a commercial premise was his way of trying to say that it's not a private B&B when it clearly was. I don't know if he thought that detail, if he altered it, would negate my status. And then he says, firstly, after he has ignored so many of my points, do you want or need to stay at the property? Or are you looking for me to stop them? Folks, did I not make it very clear? Did I not make it very clear? And then he defends Chloe's father speaking. He defends his refusal to speak to Chloe. So this is David's refusal to speak to Chloe now, because he's not actually making an effort to speak to her. He's only accepted speaking to her father. So he defends that for no reason. And this is interesting that he claims they're saying the date could be flexible and they're willing to speak to me. You saw on video, you saw on the playlist, 3-part series, that they were not flexible at all. I even tried to negotiate with them already, and they weren't willing to speak with me at all. And he says, I appreciate your allegation on harassment. What about the violence? What about the violence? Once again, he's ignoring that. And he says he'll take a statement at a later date. Why not now? Why is he deflecting, just like he puts me on to the housing advice team, deflecting everything so that he doesn't actually have to do anything in his job other than protect his fellow traffickers. And of course, I continue to call him out on everything. David, as I've said, whoever you're speaking to is not telling the truth. I've already reported that Chloe has falsified information about me in the situation, which I have proof of on camera. Therefore, it is expected she herself would lie to you. Nonetheless, you would need to speak to Chloe, the owner of the property in the let, for this exchange to even be legitimate. Is there a reason she's not competent to deal with her own let and responsibility of it? What is the name of the man you spoke to? So right now he's like ghost man. And he spoke to, he allegedly spoke to a man who was Chloe's father, but without a name. I bet you no conversation, no fake conversation even took place. Of course, I want and need to stay at the property. I have made it abundantly clear in my communication with you that I need to stay at the property. I kindly ask again that you carefully consider my communication before responding further. Did I already say that, folks? As I've already said, I have Chloe and her family refusing to speak to me and being violent recorded. Forcing me to try to re-engage with them is not a solution, nor is it safe. His response. And of course, he ignores, deflects again. What this boils down to is that, as I understand it, you have no protection from eviction. So he's just brushing off everything I've said. He's not facing the facts. He's not actually acknowledging the facts or dealing with the facts. He's just reiterating the false narrative built up by Chloe. You do not have a domestic tenancy and are living in what was a commercial guest house. I have spoken to other specialists who have come to the same conclusion. However, I understand that as Chloe does not share facilities with you, you are an occupier with protection. The second, however, she is running a commercial guest house and have protection she needs to be defined as a residential landlord. So there's some typing errors there, but I'm guessing he meant to say, however, she's running a commercial guest house, and for her to have protection, she needs to be defined as a residential landlord. So what does that even mean? I do not understand why you wish to stay at the property when you do not feel safe. So what does he say again? Yeah, passes me off. Please contact the housing advice team or find alternative accommodation urgently. So I already made it clear that I had nowhere to go. I already made it clear that the government doesn't want anybody to fucking move. I already made it clear why I needed to stay. And it's not up to him to understand why I want to stay. So this is a very common tactic of narcissists. You know, all agents are narcissists. They will ignore all the facts and just invalidate your personal feelings of why your rights should be upheld. So they won't acknowledge your rights. They won't acknowledge the facts. They just said, oh, well, you know, it doesn't even matter to you. It shouldn't matter to you. And they're also telling you how you should feel. He's telling me I should want to leave. And that's neither here nor there. The whole purpose, you know, I'm not having a conversation with a friend. I'm having a conversation with the government person, government employee. It is his job to uphold my rights, whether he agrees with them or not, whether he understands my personal motivations or not, even though I made them clear. It doesn't matter. Those are my rights. And he tries to invalidate and negate my rights just by saying he doesn't understand why I feel the way I do. Yeah. So again, not even sure like what he's trying to say with this. So if she's a residential landlord, how does that negate my stance? How does that change my status? And I mean, he's ignoring all this while I keep reiterating, I have video evidence that she's lying to you. You're going off false information. And I have video evidence that it's false. So here we go. Oh, he's responding to say there was a mistake. This is the mistake that he is referring to. Because in his previous email, it's too much to scroll up to, but you can go back in the video. In his previous email, it was saying that I was an occupier with protection. Now he's like, oh no, I accidentally told the truth. Because he got lost in his own gaslighting. And so adding on here, he says, well, I've left the house. Now he didn't get this information from me. So who did he get this information from? He doesn't state it. And so he says he's closed the case. So once Chloe got rid of me, he thinks he got rid of me too. He thinks that my complaints shouldn't be acknowledged. He thinks that the antisocial behavior, the violence, the harassment, the threatening, the abuse, it doesn't have to be dealt with. And it's just, he can't, like legitimately, he would need to confirm with me. He would need to ask me if I've left the guest house. He doesn't say where he got this information from. And wherever he got it from, it wouldn't be legitimate until he confirmed it with myself, the complainee. Is that accurate? Complainant or complainee? The person making the complaint. Right. So actually, so I didn't respond for a long time because I had just changed hands of handlers or traffickers, and I had a lot to deal with. And obviously I wasn't getting anywhere with this, but I went through the motions to get my evidence on David Sexton to expose him. So at that point, like, I just needed to take a break from all of this. I had a lot going on. And so I didn't respond immediately, but he responded pretty quickly to recall my complaints. He recalled my complaints. So he closed it and everything. And then I responded a couple months later in June. So we went, yeah, it was 3 months later. Between Chloe's abuse and the dizzying false narrative her alleged family fed to you and your gaslighting me, all while I've been trafficked, I have not been able to respond further to your emails until now. So I'm defining my situation as human trafficking. This is very important because, once again, he ignores it. Just like all other authorities do whenever I report human trafficking. A lot of times they don't even inquire with me about it. They just ignore it. It is noted that you have routinely ignored the critical complaints I have reported. You have ignored the fact that I have video evidence supporting my claims in lieu of favoring false information provided to you by an unnamed, unrelated source. You've also reneged on filing a complaint against Chloe without reason. You've displayed absolutely no concern or regard for my safety in the clearly dangerous situation I reported and have video evidence of. You only feigned concern when you gave your final dismissal by shifting Chloe's responsibility for legal and safe treatment of her tenants and your own responsibility for handling my report honestly onto myself. What I'm referring to there is, his little sign off of, given everything, I don't even care about your complaints. Why do you even want to live there? You've done all this during a pandemic lockdown, a vulnerable time during which it is so improbable, if not impossible and unsafe, you know, if we're going with the whole COVID situation, the whole belief that leaving your house will get you infected, it is unsafe to move. So unsafe, so impossible that the government pre-warned the public of their legislation to stop all evictions. On top of it all, you've done all this to a woman who you know is already vulnerable, as I've reported, being lured from one abusive situation into Chloe's property, another abusive situation. You did this to a woman who, according to Chloe, whom you blindly sided with via an unnamed man claiming to be her father, had coronavirus. In other words, you did all this to a vulnerable woman who you assumed was ill with coronavirus during a lockdown, abetting a violent and illegal force out onto the street, or to another abusive situation. And I told him that I had been trafficked. This is egregious behavior which will not be ignored or tolerated. I would like to file a complaint about you. Please advise the process for doing this and the name and job title of the person who I will be speaking to. Please include a government resource against which I can check the process for filing the complaint. And then because this was like my final sign off of washing my hands of all of this. Did I really have in mind to file a complaint? I wanted it on the table, but more so I wanted to expose David. I knew that he probably wouldn't respond to this as requested to give me the proper procedure for filing a complaint. And nonetheless, I mean, I've made my points here. Filing a complaint isn't necessary. And so this is my final sign off to him as an Illuminati member. If you continue to be non-compliant with the law and human rights, I will have my mommy call you. Or do you only take calls from daddies to uphold the patriarchy? Either way, God is watching and karma is inescapable. And I may have encoded my name with some energy, that's why it's capitalized. And I didn't open his, I saw that he emailed me back and I didn't open it. I was not in a good place to handle more of this bullshit. You know, that's why it took me 3 months to get back to it. And intuition told me, like, it's not worth your time. Just don't even bother. Just mentally close the door on that. And this is part of psychic protection as well. You have to have these psychic boundaries. So I only opened it just now and read it. So I'll show you when it was, right? And so he's just pretending to be all polite. Good morning. Thank you for getting in touch. Firstly, I must apologize for not making an appointment to see you to take the statement. We still have time, and we can arrange a time at your convenience. I fully understand your frustration, and you can make it a complaint at this link. Regards. And so that is the end of it. Oh. Yeah, see? We've scrolled to the bottom finally. So let's break this down again. How much of my email does he ignore? So when I'm filing a complaint against him, he thinks it's his opportunity to meet with me to make it right. He had ample time to make it right. He had ample time to take my statement. And that's not the only issue that I pointed out in my email. So it wouldn't even be part of the protocol to take my statement after I've said I want to file a complaint. After he closed my case and I said I want to file a complaint against him, it's going to be his responsibility to take my statement now? Really? And so he gives me no other opportunities to make a statement to anybody else. And look at how he undermines me. Oh, I'm just frustrated. All these valid points that I made. Oh, it's just me feeling frustrated. And he understands. Oh yeah, so he's feigning empathy. And in the most simplistic, lazy way. So he's faking empathy by saying, oh, he understands how I'm feeling. So he's naming that I'm feeling frustrated. And he understands it. If he understood my points, then he would have corrected his behavior. So then he gives me this link. So he expects that this suffices for the information I asked. I said I wanted to know the department I would be speaking to or the person. and I wanted a government link, so this is at least a government link to make the complaints. So those emails speak for themselves. I made my points very clear. So I'm gonna wrap it up there, and I'm actually gonna make a separate video for personal updates for everything that's been going on within MK Ultra in the past few months. This was already a long video. But so the update is going to include recent kidnapping and obstruction by the police, gang stalking through the community, a public violence Illuminati attack, which I did make a video describing on my YouTube channel, which is focused in spirituality and consciousness. And so that is going to be linked in the description box below if you want to check it out. My update will also include, I've moved 3 times after Chloe's, always with a handler. However, now I am not in the living space with a handler. Praise God. Oh, praise God. It's been so healing despite all the attempts to obstruct my healing, including the harassment from my landlord. It has been so healing, and it's temporary, unfortunately. I only have a couple more weeks. I don't have another place to go to yet. So my update will also include having lived with 2 of my programmers from childhood. So those are 2 programmers who were responsible for the original programming. And I lived with both of them here in Darlington. My update will also include a lot of things that I've been recalling from repressed memories, including satanic rituals in Darlington. And other elements of memory recall. Sorry, I'm just trying to piece it all together in my mind. There's probably more, so follow me up for the next video and my updates. I have been collecting evidence of everything I've told you all along the way. In my update, it's going to be like just relaying everything to you, so it might not necessarily include lots of evidence or any evidence at all. I'm just going to give you the update, and the evidence will be on its way. Everything's being recorded, labeled, cataloged, backed up, so that takes a lot of time, especially with the amount of targeting that is placed on me. So yeah, we'll end this video here. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for educating yourself about the inner workings of MK Ultra trafficking, because it is a pandemic and it hides behind the scenes. It hides in plain sight, actually. A lot of stuff happens behind the scenes, but a lot of stuff happens right in front of your face, and you may never know it. You don't know what you're looking at. So I've shown you some of the more behind the scenes stuff, like my correspondence with the corrupt David Sexton. Actually, let me show you his social media profile. Let's put a face to this perpetrator. Right, so here you have his public Facebook profile. So it's not just the name that confirms it, but also his employment is stated right here. No doubt a bunch of stuff is going to be made private after I make this video. So nothing too revealing, just give you a face to the perpetrator. David Sexton, everybody. Aiding and abetting human trafficking, in fact, just being a primary perpetrator of the trafficking. That's as far as it'll zoom in. And those are some of the people in his life. Some of the family members of the Illuminati family. Just things to be aware of if you're local, or if you're ever in England, if you're ever in the area. You'd be surprised how many perpetrators you know. This is an older photo, so you can bet the people in a perpetrator's life, the close friends, are also perpetrators. So I want you to keep in mind that these people that you're passing frequently throughout your day are perpetrators of human trafficking, of Satanism, of pedophilia, of rape, of torture, of murder, mind control programming. And this needs to be exposed. So share this video wide and far. Share this channel wide and far, because this channel is just begun. Nowhere near have we scratched the surface. And yet we still have plenty of revealing information and pertinent information to explain how the underground system of MK Ultra works, which is necessary for people to be informed of if we're going to end it on our planet. We can't just sit by and continue to accept it as an ugly fact of our world. So do share this video, and any likes, comments, you know, changes the algorithm to make this video more available, or available to more people. So that is appreciated as well, and you can directly share it with more people yourself. If you'd like to support, you can also send donations. You can use any of the links in the description box or at the homepage of my BitChute channel, and that's going to help me to give me more options for housing right now. So I'm so thankful that my income, my financial situation has improved some over the past few months. It's, you know, it's just still kind of scratching by, and I'm having difficulty finding safe accommodation. And if my budget was beyond like the bare minimum, I would have more options so that I could be more in control of finding a safe accommodation, whether it's going to be self-contained. So that's like my requirements. That's going to be so necessary for me to stay safe, regardless of any tactics the Illuminati might like to employ with my accommodation, as long as I'm in a good location, and I have what I need in the accommodation, and I'm on my own, I'm going to be golden. So to help get me there, any donation that you can send is so grateful. Or you can subscribe to my Patreon. The link is at my homepage, or you should see it like right near the video on my BitChute channel. So I'll see you in the next video. Take care.